concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream, and happy Sunday afternoon to you. Sunday evening to you folks in Europe, who theoretically this stream is timed just to make it convenient for you. I have had my shot of coffee. Had a little Starbucks nitro cold brew this morning, some vanilla sweet cream. So should probably run upstairs and get another one. I'm not going to make it through this stream. I'll make it. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. We're gonna do some Q&A. I always like clean my desk so it looks nice for the stream. Try to get everything organized, and and I've realized I've just basically moved everything from the left side to the right side. It doesn't really make it cleaner, does it? Oh. There we go. Oh. There, now you can't see it. Ha ha! Now my desk is clean. I've hidden it. That's the secret to cleaning, is to just hide things where no one can see them. And then it's clean. Yes, indeed. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Now we are going to do some Q&A. We're going to do some questions and answers. You're going to ask questions. I'm going to answer them. Is that the DJI Avata in the back? No, it is not. DJI. I'm not even going to act like upset. Like, hey, DJI, why don't you call me? I'm not even going to act upset. I'm not mad. I understand. You really gotta, there's the thing though. I've always done right by DJI. I feel like I have. Like, so, a lot of times someone will ask me if I want to be a part of a product release, or they'll send me a new, they won't. If I agree to be part of a product release and this is the embargo day where you're doing the big release, I'll hit the date. I will. I understand. That's the expectation. But a lot of times someone will send me a product. They'll be like, hey, we have a new product. It's coming out. I want you to know it's already in the mail. At no point do I go, yes, I will make a video for you on this day and time. So then it comes in the mail and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, it's cool. I'm thinking about how to make a video and I get distracted by something else. And it's just some, and you know, like 3 weeks later I make the video. And I understand why a vendor would be not as enthusiastic about sending me stuff based on the fact that I'm not as, you know, I'm not like, yes, yeah, let me get this video out. So I'm not mad when a vendor does a release and they're like, nah, we're going to go with people who are actually going to be like on the money. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. But I've always been on the money with DJI releases, man. DJI sends me a product. It is that video is out. It's out. It maybe is not as gung-ho positive as they might have liked. Maybe that's what happened. All right, so we'll just get this out of the way. There's going to be a lot of the mute button during this stream. I'm still coughing. I'm feeling okay. Didn't give them enough credit in my documentary. Ferdinand Wolf was featured prominently in the documentary. But I'm still coughing. Here's the interesting thing. Interesting to me. It only really is bad when I talk a lot. It's only really bad when I talk a lot. So I'm fine, mostly. And then I start talking. So unfortunately, I don't have to talk a lot for this stream. And, you know, I just didn't want to blow off the stream and be like, hey, stream is canceled. I wanted to show willing and get out here. 661 FPV thinks there was too much DJI in the documentary. Yeah. Hey, Athix, I realized that I never did that thing that you asked me to do. You mentioned something that a favor you wanted from me, and I was like, yeah, sure, and I didn't do it. It was good to see you again, by the way. Good to see you again, and I will figure that out for you. I have a workaround, okay? But I did want to let you know that I didn't forget about you. Well, I did. I wouldn't, if I had remembered, I wouldn't have left without doing the thing that you asked me to do. But then, as I was on the way home, I was like, oh, I didn't do that thing. So don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of you. Okay. So instead, I'm going to be just clearing my throat a lot. See, that's better than coughing, right? Anyway, I do not have the DJI Avata. I do not have the goggles, the new goggles. What are they calling them? The DJI Goggles 2, whatever they are. I don't have them. I'm going to do my best to get them. But let me ask you this. What about the air unit? What do you know about the air unit? Because we know that the goggles are coming and the Avata's coming. What's out there about the air unit? When are the air unit? Is that coming too? Don't do that. Drink water instead. But I don't have any water right here. I only had a cup of cold brew, nitro cold brew. How many packs have I flown today? I have flown none packs today. I went to Minefield yesterday, Ken Heron's event, which is about a 4.5-hour drive. So Friday I drove to Brownsville, Tennessee. I went to Minefield for Ken Heron's birthday. It was a blast. And then I drove back, and I was actually pretty wiped out this morning. Unfortunately, I am not fully recovered from being sick, unfortunately. I mean, on the one hand, I'm not acutely ill. I don't have, like a fever or anything. I am able to get up and get around, but I definitely have some lingering symptoms, so to speak. And it's more than just a cough. Like this morning I got up and I was like, I don't feel so great. I went right back to bed. I got out of bed at like 9:30 and was like, I don't feel so great. And when I got back into bed and I was asleep till like 12 o'clock, till noon. And then I was like, I got a live stream to do. So, yeah. Anyway, we're not going to dwell on that, but I do want to let you guys know I'm still not 100%. So, and somebody in my YouTube comments was like, "Why is Bardwell always sick?" And I'm like, "I'm hardly ever sick." I have, like, way back when there was that period where I got a really bad cough and lost my voice, and then for like 2 weeks, every video I made was, "Hi, I'm Joshua Bardwell." That happened. And then I got to tell you, from about, January 2020 to like 2020, middle 2022, I didn't get anything. I didn't get any illnesses because I was freaking, anyway. So 507RC, I did get super sick after the remote ID protest. Yeah. That was one of the worst flus I've ever had. After the remote ID protest, a lot of people came home and had a bug from that. That was, interestingly, that was in February 2020. And it was before there was a lot of public awareness. I don't even want to say the name because, number one, YouTube might be like, "What are you talking about over there?" And number two, it's going to start the comments of people just talking shit, and I just don't want to go there. But a lot of people got sick. I was like completely knocked out for 2 days after the protest. Like literally, I just was in bed with a fever, did not get out of bed, just slept for, I swear it was 48 hours straight. That was in one of the worst illnesses I had in recent memory. But and I have to say, one of the local guys who came to that protest, he thinks that was the disease that will not be named, at least not today. He thinks it was. I don't think the symptoms were consistent with that. I think it was just a really bad flu. But who knows? Who knows? Anyway, here we go. Let's get so I'm not sick all the time, but I have been sick for like the last 3 weeks. So there you go. And if I'm a little if I'm not making as many videos as I usually do, or if I'm a little lower energy, that's why. But you got to just do what you got to do. You got to just go with the flow, accept life, and do your best. Okay. This one was definitely, I got a positive test, so no doubt. Well, anyway, let's move on. We're going to take questions. I'm here to take your questions. I originally started the live streams because it was a way to make content without having to edit it, and I would have other things I could do on these days instead of edit videos. But they have become one of the ways that I just feel like I'm connecting with folks in the FPV community in a way that I really miss when it's gone. So I'm really happy to be here with you guys. I'm going to be taking your questions here in the chat. Like this one from Malik Asharif. I have a budget of $1,200 I assume 1200 USD for a digital FPV kit with everything I need to start. What do you recommend? I'll tell you what, Malika Sharif, we're going to take that question in just a second after I finish greeting the chat. And I'm going to say thank you to my patrons over here in the Discord server, who will post some GIFs. And thank you to you guys. And also thanks to the folks who left super chats. I will be reading these super chats in just a second. No, more than a second. A minute. One of Brad Pitt's greatest roles. What is the name of that movie? I don't even remember the name of that movie. Great role. Let's get this question. I like this question from Malik Asharif. A budget of $1,200 to get into digital FPV with everything I need to start. What do you recommend? Let's run this down. This could, like, you could almost make a video out of this. No, not that. No, definitely not Facebook. Jesus Christ. I don't know what's going to come up on my face. If I open my... Let's just say I have no idea what crazy shit from my aunt or whoever might show up if I open my personal Facebook page on stream. Let's not do that. $1,200. Okay, so we're going to need a spreadsheet. We definitely have to have a spreadsheet. Okay. All good projects start with a spreadsheet. Okay, budget, let's say, 1,200, and then, like a budget remaining, equals, well, we'll get there, so let's start with the video system. Okay, here, I'm going to go back to my face cam here. We'll talk it through. Let's start with the video system. He said digital FPV. That means his choice is HD0, DJI V2, Caddx Vista, etc. Walk Snail, Fat Shark. That's it, right? That's it. Theoretically, he could wait. Like, let's assume that if you're willing to wait for, a month or so, then you could get the DJI, the new goggles. See, currently, I can't remember how many of the things I know about the release schedule are public, and how many of them I only know because someone told me in confidence. So I'm not going to say anything about the release schedule of the DJI, the Avata, and the new goggles. Let's do this. No, because we don't know the pricing. Do we know the pricing? We do know the pricing. We know the pricing through leaks. I don't know if that pricing is correct, but I think the pricing is correct. I have to tell you, I spoke with one retailer and was like, "Hey, DJI isn't sending me this new system. What could I do to, like, try to buy it from you and get it out snappy on release day?" And they were like, "Well, we don't actually have pre-order pricing from DJI yet." So maybe those leaks are true, but maybe they're not. if the DJI hasn't told the retailers pricing yet. But let's just say that, assume that we're in a time period where you can buy the new DJI goggles and the new Air unit separately. Okay, so how does that break down price wise? Let's say, he said digital, HD0, DJI V2. They can't even call it the DJI V2 because it's not even the... Hang on, I gotta make this bigger. Can't even call it the V2 because the new one is the Goggles 2. It's so frustrating. How do I zoom? Why can't I... Can I zoom? Zoom. Oh, I can only zoom to 400%? Why? Oh, there we go. Okay. DJI FPV goggles DJI FPV V2 Vista Air EG Caddx Vista. Let's do that. It's not the Caddx Vista anymore because Caddx got fired. Or whatever. Let's see. New DJI goggles 2 with O3 air unit. Now, technically, I don't think we know whether the new goggles will be backwards compatible with the Vista. We know that the V2 goggle is forwards compatible with the O3 air unit. I don't think I'm going to assume that the new goggles are backwards compatible. I don't think that's been confirmed. And then, so let's just start with price. Now, I'm going to set aside HD0 for a second. Fat Shark Walk Snail. Let's see. Goggle is, I believe it's almost 600. Is it $599? I think it's $599. As low as, oh, so that's a whole kit. Nah, I don't want to assume the antennas. Dominator HD. This is not going to be a short. 600 for the goggles. And I believe it's 160 for the VTX. So this is going to be equals 600 for the goggles, 160 for a let's do the VTX separately. Nah, let's just 600 plus 160. And then you need a set of antennas. You're going to want a decent set of antennas like... Hello, what are we doing? Don't crap out on me, I'm streaming. Okay. Trusty X Air for DJI. I think it's like $70 for the DJI set. Is it 60? That's a single. Is that a single or is that two of them? DJI FPV left-hand polarized. That's the one. Oh, there's the set. 75. Malik's saying he wants a pre-built. Okay, no problem. 75. We're just doing the goggles right now. $75 for the antennas. I'm not going to worry about batteries because he can use his flight packs probably, unless they're 6S. That's annoying. But we're going to leave the battery out. We're just going to go with the goggles, the VTX. Boom. $835. So now we'll do equals... Oh, well, we're not there yet. DJI Goggles 2 is $460 plus... Oh, that's the O3 area. No. The old goggles. Today's goggles. $460 plus, I believe it's around $160 for a Caddx Vista. Technically, you can use the stock antennas if you really want to, but let's just put like an iFlight Crystal in there. Get FPV doesn't carry the iFlight Crystal because they compete with it. I bet. No problem. $45 plus, yeah, for the set here. 45, 55, 60, $60-ish. Okay, so $60 for the antennas. HD0 is a tough one because if you have to buy goggles, how much are the HD0 goggles going to be when they come out? That's a tough one. We don't know. And if you have to buy a set of goggles, you're going to spend like $500 on goggles. So we're not going to go to FPV Exchange for used stuff. That's too all over the place. We're gonna start out just buying new. Let's just say HD0 $600 for the goggles, and a VTX is, I believe, around $150. How much is the Freestyle VTX? Only $100. Oh, but that's without a camera. And $50 for a camera, let's say. 600 plus 150. Oops, that's not right. And then the new DJI goggles is going to be like $650 something? What was the price? It's like $650 plus $300. So, I think we can easily see that the new DJI goggles is completely out of Malik's budget. Okay? The Fat Shark system is also kind of out of his budget, and he said that he wants a bind and fly, and those don't exist. Maybe Rotor Riot sells one you could buy, but there's not a lot of choice in bind and flies. Same is true for HD0. So on the price versus performance, the DJI V2 wins, and on the desirability of bind and flies, DJI V2 wins. And the only downside here is, in theory, maybe sometime in the future it will be discontinued. But I still feel like, especially at this price, it's a safe bet, because I feel like even if DJI cut the tap today, and I'm not saying they are, but if they did, I think you could still get Vistas. They would still do warranty repair on it. You could still get Vistas and air units for a little while. So now he's doing a self-built. Oh, hang on. He's doing a self-built. So actually this pricing needs to change, because he's going to buy the Vista as part of the VTX, as part of the quad. Now that doesn't change the calculus, because again, the others are not available in bind and flies very widely. HD0 has a couple of bind and flies. Walk Snail may have like one that Rotor Riot makes, but generally there's not a lot of selection there. So if budget didn't drive us this way, the need to have a bind and fly would drive us this way. So that's where we're going to start. Let's just grab a couple columns. Okay. So what do we got left? False. What? No, minus. Got $740 left. Okay, well, now we got to look at a quadcopter. And this is going to be fairly easy. For example, Nazgul Evoke, $475. Gepard C Mark V, $486 to $500. All of these are going to come in around $500. Right? They're just all going to come in around $500. Did I remove the antenna price? Thank you. You're right, I did. That's we will want to get. I mean, you don't have to, but we'll want to get an aftermarket antenna. We probably will. We'll cut that out if we. Here, let's do it separately. There we go. Okay. Now, so I'm just going to say, we're just going to say $500 here. And your choice could be, you have many choices here. I would personally, my favorites are the iFlight Nazgul Evoke, the Gepard C Mark V, and Diatone Roma F5 V2. The Diatone Roma, I think, is less favorite compared to the Evoke or the Mark V. I have reviews of all of these, though. Haha, $300. Good, joking. Prices have gone up. So, but we're not going to dive deep into which of those you should get, because you can do your own research. We're just working on a budget here. What does that leave us? $180. Oh, this is going to be tight. Okay, so controller. I mean, if you're doing bind and flies, then you're either going to get FreeSky or you're going to get Crossfire, right? Do any of these guys come with Express LRS? Oh my God. Okay, Gepard C Mark V for the win. Nazgul Evoke, does it come with Express LRS? Kudos if it does. I'm actually super impressed if it does. Where's the... Oh, that's the bind and fly. That's bind and fly. Where's the receiver selection? Where's the receiver selection? Why can I not select a receiver here? That's weird. Let's try a different shop, a different store. Good old Pyrodrome. That's analog, though. He wants digital. Analog, Cadix Vista, okay. DJI or Azure. No, see, so I think that people are telling me in the chat that the Evoke can be ordered with Express LRS. I think we're gonna. I don't see it though. Let's try one more store. Cadix Vista and DJI Cam, choose version. Yeah, see, I'm not seeing the Evoke either on iFlight's website or on any other stores. I'm not seeing it with Express LRS. Let's see. We got a link here from the Discord. Here's Express LRS for the Gep RC available. Vista Pro System, bind and fly. No, I'm sorry, I don't. Am I missing it? I don't see an option to select Express LRS receiver here. Is this pre-installed? It doesn't say. Click geometry. Okay. Oh, I have to pick a geometry first? No. And 6S version. Ah, there we go. That's a little weird. That's a little weird. Express LRS 2.4. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. So either the Evoke or the Gep RC with some hoop jumping. The Gep RC appears to be more widely available with Express LRS, but you can find them. So we're going to say it's 533. That's 500. That gives the Evoke a little bit of an edge. We're going to say $500. And for a controller, we're going to say Radio Master Zorro ELRS 2.4 gigahertz. Price on that is going to be I think the price on that's pretty reasonable. $160. You could probably do it a little cheaper. But I think the point is that your $1,200 budget is going to be a struggle if you're buying new. Because, so like, let's say, okay, I'm not going to get the crystal antenna. Nope, can't afford it. I'm going to use the Omnis. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I'm gonna find some way to get a controller. Like, is the Jumper T Pro $100? Let's see. We're gonna try to get a controller for $100. You know, if we squeeze this just a little, we need a charger and batteries and props. What else am I missing, folks? The Commando is $130. Okay, $130. Charger, batteries, props. Let's say we find a cheap charger for $60. Let's say we get like 4 batteries. Where are you seeing the Zorro for $120? I would rather buy the Zorro. Okay, we got a Pyrodrone link with the Zorro for $120. Fair enough. It's let's say we got batteries for $20 a piece and we buy 4 of them. We're at just over $20. And technically, I think you can buy these things and be in the air. But it's going to be mighty close. And that's a shame because, man, there used to be a time. Oh, we need batteries for the Zorro. Good point. Another $15 on there. You see my point. This is, and I know we spent, somebody said, oh, you spent way too much time on this, Bardwell. I wanted to work through this because it used to be that I would say you can get into the hobby for $600 if you scrape bare bones. And with $1,200 or $1,300, you could get everything you need. It's just not true anymore, is it? I mean, we kind of knew that, but it's just not true anymore. That's not everything you need. You need tools, you need spares. And that's only just the beginning. So, alrighty. Well, thank you for that question. Now I know. Now I know the absolute minimum. Now, granted, that was buying new stuff and binding flies. You could do better if you built your own. You could do better if you bought used. But just the lazy man's, I just want to spend money and buy things, like $1,200, $1,300 with digital. Analog would knock $200 off of that. If you were willing to go with a cheap analog goggles, it would knock $700 off of that. Yeah. If you got a $100 set of analog goggles, is a lot of money saved. That's a good point. All right. Let's get these super chats out of the way. Kevin Cook, thank you for a $5 super chat. Free Lojo FPV, thank you for a $2 super chat. Free Lojo says, go get coffee. It's tempting. You are a barbarian. Thank you for a $10 super chat. Hi, JB. I'm having my forever problem of no stick inputs in the receiver tab. I have a new Immersion RC Auto receiver connected to a T-Motor F7 flight controller. Receiver is soldered to 5 volts ground and TX5. Okay. There's a couple things I want to tell you that you need to do. Well, if you're using Immersion RC Ghost and you're not getting output in the receiver tab, the first thing is that in the menu, there's an option for bind, and there's an option for bind plus setup. Bind and setup. And the first time you bind a receiver, it's a good idea to do bind plus setup. What that does is that tells the receiver all of its settings, which it will then remember going forward. So the main thing that it tells the receiver is what is what protocol it needs to output to the flight controller. Now, it should default to Ghost protocol, which is what you're probably trying to use, but it's just a good idea the first time you bind a receiver to do bind plus setup. If you've only bound but not bind plus setup, then go ahead and do a bind plus setup. Later, when you have a receiver and you don't remember how it was set up, maybe, then you just bind it and it rebinds. Okay? So first, go ahead and do bind plus setup. Second, in the flight controller, you said that you were using UART 5, so you're going to want to have Serial RX enabled for UART 5, and you probably do. You're going to want to go to the receiver tab, and you're going to want to make sure you have IRC Ghost as the protocol, and you probably do. And you need to be using Betaflight 4.3 to get IRC Ghost, which I recommend. If you have Betaflight 4.2, you could use SRXL2. Fly and Ryan, I do not think you need to hold the button on the receiver when you power up, if you're just doing a regular bind. And then finally, there are some CLI options that often need to be put in. Set Serial RX half duplex equals on. And that's necessary anytime you're using a protocol like Ghost or SRXL2 that uses the TX pad. And frankly, Betaflight devs, why don't you do this automatically? I am just a humble YouTube streamer, and I don't know the ins and outs of Betaflight coding, but it seems to me like every time I use SRXL2 or SRXL also technically, but I never use it, or Ghost, it seems like every time I do that, I have to go into the CLI and type set serial XF duplex equals on. Since I always have to change that option whenever I'm using those protocols, why don't you do it for me? Why doesn't that option default to on when I am using one of those protocols? Seems like a no-brainer to me. Anybody out there, I could just go create an issue on GitHub. But I'm a arrogant YouTube streamer who just is too good. It's too good to get my hands dirty with all that. Oh, the devs are over there on GitHub, like working. I don't want to do that. So instead, I'm just going to bitch about it on a live stream and hope that it percolates back their direction. And maybe it will. Anyway, you got to do that. And then that usually works. That's usually it. Yeah, Whitmead, FreeSky F port as well. That's another protocol that needs that option set. It doesn't seem to me like there's ever a time when you might or might not need that option. I mean, if it was like yes or no, then I could understand the devs being like, hey, you said it. But since Ghost will never work without that option being set. SRXL2 will never work without that option being set. So it seems like the option should just be automatically set. Okay. By the way, for those of you who, if you actually want to know, Betaflight configurator. If you actually want to know the actual way to handle something like that, and by the way, you can do this. You don't have to be a stuck-up YouTube creator. You could be anybody. You go to the Betaflight GitHub repo. You go to Issues. I'll have to sign in. You go to Issues, and the first thing you do is you search for, you try to see if anybody else has already created an issue about your topic, because it's polite to not waste people's time. So I searched for the term serial or XF duplex. Let's take out is open. Maybe there was a previous issue that they closed. So we're going to search and see if anyone has suggested this issue before, and it seems like they haven't. So then we're going to go new issue, feature request, title, like okay. No, it's not a problem. Describe the solution you like. Other information. I don't know. We got to fit this in here. When using Ghost, there we go. The solution I'd like. See, now I'm not too good. And alternatives you've considered. Alternatives. Alternative is doing it myself every single time I set this up, including walking noobs through doing it, which is annoying. Other information. Do I need? No. Okay. Now I can submit the issue. This is how you do feature requests and bug reports for Betaflight. If you didn't know that, now you do. Don't be a jerk about this. Don't waste the developer's time with like just bullshit support requests. But if you have an actual reproducible bug and a feature request, this is how you do it. And anybody with a GitHub account can do it. So. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Hopefully you are a barbarian. That got your Ghost working. Malika Sharif, thank you for a $1 super chat. Leo Ponce, thank you for a $5 super chat. I plan to move to the United States. What do I need to fly as a hobby? Make videos and upload to YouTube without monetizing. I'm going to be over 250 grams. Leo, but until September 16th, 2023, remote ID doesn't matter for you. That's a year from now, so just I'm going to make that distinction. You need to take the FAA trust test. TRUST. It's just Google FAA trust test. And you need to go to FAAdronezone.com. It's a silly name for the actual official website of drones with the FAA. But FAAdronezone.com or FAA Drone Zone. Sorry, it's not .com. I apologize. It's .gov. Go to the FAA Drone Zone, FAA.gov website. I say that because if you search for FAA registered drone, there are a bunch of fake websites that will quote-unquote register your drone. And they're like, cool, we registered your drone. And they take your money. And it's like, it's not the FAA. They're just trying to rip you off. So be careful. But go to the FAA.gov website. And recreational flyers take the trust test, and then you can also register yourself as a recreational flyer, and you need to put that number on all your drones, and then basically you're good. The trust test tells you the basics, so that's where I would start. Wes Magyar, thank you for a $5 super chat. What you're saying is that being in the vicinity of Ken Heron literally makes you sick. No, not at all. Not at all. Mike Curran, thank you for a $10 super chat. Can't get stick inputs in beta flight. Same flight controller, Newbie Drone 200 and Crossfire and CF RX in all my stuff. Pulled the receiver out, put it in another quad, and it's fine. In this quad, it won't work. Mike Curran, you had better just email me about this because we're at the level of troubleshooting that is kind of tedious to do on a live stream with the round trip delay in the comments and so forth. And like, I'm going to ask you to show me photos, and it's not going to be really easy to do. So I have to say, Mike, thank you for the $10 donation, and I would love to help you get your receiver working. But I have to say that it'd be better to just email me, joshuabardwell@gmail.com. By the way, in case you're new here, anybody can email me. I help everybody. I always have, and probably always will, because it's working out for me okay so far. So if you want help, just email me. If at some point you go, damn, Bardwell's helping me a lot, I should join his Patreon. By all means, my philosophy is to try to help everybody, to not discriminate, and because when I was starting out, I got a lot of help for free from people who didn't ask me for a dime in return. And I wouldn't be here without them. So I feel like it's only fair. So anybody can email me, joshuabardwell@gmail.com. Very easy. And I'll try to help you out. But Mike, that's what I recommend you do. And I do appreciate your donation. Okay. Uranium asks, are you planning to install remote ID in every single quad you review after September 16th? Uranium, remember that September 16th, 2022 is the deadline for manufacturers. Individual hobbyists have to comply in 2023. So it wouldn't be until 2023 that self-built drones would have to comply. And that's a good thing because, as far as I know, there isn't a remote ID module that anyone can buy today. The FAA hasn't approved one. In addition, the FAA has not actually defined CBOs, community-based organizations, which is relevant because CBOs are what can designate FRIAs, and FRIAs, F-R-I-A, is locations where you can fly without remote ID. I'm gonna be straight with you about my actual game plan. And granted, it's a year out before this is relevant, so obviously there's time for it to change. As soon as the FAA defines a CBO and we learn what the process is for defining a FRIA, I'm going to attempt to get my property declared as a FRIA. And I don't know if that's, it's naive of me to think that that's a thing. But we don't know. Like, what is a FRIA? We can assume that, like, an AMA field would be a FRIA. But we don't know what else might be. And we can assume, well, we shouldn't assume too much. I feel like that's a safe assumption. But I would hope that the FPV Freedom Coalition would be designated as a CBO. The FPV Freedom Coalition has structured their organization to meet the requirements, the expected requirements of a CBO. For example, they're a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. So I would hope that FPV Freedom Coalition would be designated as a CBO, and then I would hope that an argument could be made that my property meets the requirements for a FRIA. And if it didn't, I would look into what it would take to make it meet those requirements. But education is one of the things that is used to designate as a FRIA. And I think you could make a very compelling argument that I am educational. And now I would not want that to or expect that to be some kind of special treatment that only I get because I have a notable personality in FPV. And I would not expect that the FPV Freedom Coalition would give me special treatment because of who I am. I would think that if it was possible for me to get my house designated as a FRIA, and by the way, I do know for a fact I am not in any Class D airspace. So like if your house happens to be in Class D airspace near some little airport, you're probably not going to get to be a FRIA. I don't know, but I would hope that if the and I'm not. I also don't want to speak for FPVFC and assume that they would participate in this. That's just my like fantasy. But I would hope that the future for some people is that they're able to get their property or the park they fly out or wherever designated as a FRIA, so as many people as possible can comply with the law without having to put a module on their drone. Excuse me. So, if that didn't pan out, I would be in a weird situation because the FAA would expect, as a 107 commercial operator, the FAA would expect me to have a unique remote ID module for every drone. And those modules can be transferred between drones, according to Dave Messina. So I could have like one floater module that every time I get a new drone that I need to review, I register it to that drone. And all I'll say about that is that it would be foolhardy to break those rules in a way that forced the FAA to notice and come down on you. And I wouldn't do that. So, let's see. Sebi DFPV says, aren't you afraid that FRIAs will be available to the public? Like people could come to your house because the address is public. My address is already public. I've had fly-in events at my house. Many people know my address. It's out there. I mean, if you just Google Joshua Bardwell address, an address comes up. More than one addresses. I am a registered corporation. I have a business. As a business, my business address is listed. So my address is out there. That's not a big deal. What's the fine for flying FPV with goggles and no spotter? FAA infractions like this, I'm told, start at $1,500 per infraction. What do we got here? Hang on, we got a video here from Sunshine, who wants to show it. What do we got here, Sunshine? Oh, hold on, it's muted. What information is going to be sent out into the world by this remote ID transponder, whatever it is?
Oh, he's a transponster!
Oh, that is the reference. That was a reference to Friends, for the record. That was not a coincidence. I hope I don't get copy struck for playing Friends, though. No, I'm not going to play any more Friends on my YouTube channel. That's not a thing. That's not even a word. And that's... I see Blunty is reacting. And that's how the girls lost their apartment to the boys. Chandler and Joey got to move into Monica and Jennifer Aniston, Monica and Rachel's apartment. And they had to swap apartments because they lost the Friends trivia contest. They didn't know what Chandler did for a living. And she guessed that he was a transponster. Yeah. Steve E, thank you for a $10 super chat. Thanks for what you do, JB. I'll remember my question later. Keep it up. And find a way to join Patreon on a year-by-year basis. I have to stop monthly charges. Steve, Patreon does have the option to do year-by-year charges. I don't remember why I didn't turn that on. But I didn't turn that on, and there was a reason why I didn't do that. But I don't remember what it is. Redix Rose, thank you for a $10. I mean, yeah. Thank you for a $10 super chat. What happens if there are no approved modules by next year? Well, clearly they can't. Like right now, they're pushing back the September 16th, 2022 deadline for manufacturers because there are steps that are missing and manufacturers that want to comply couldn't comply. So presumably if September 2023 comes around and there aren't any modules approved for people to use, they would push that back, presumably. Let me be straight with you, though. And if anybody from the FAA is watching this, just mute your volume real quick. You have to do it. If it's like if I ask you if you're a cop, you have to tell me you're a cop, right? It's like that. If I'm streaming and I say, if you're from the FAA, you're not allowed to listen to this, that's like copyright. You can't listen. Okay. All right, glad we got that out of the way. The reality is that a huge number of people right now are flying FPV illegally, and they don't care. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, and I'm definitely not encouraging it. You should go get your ham license. You should get your Part 107. You should always have a spotter and fly with safety regulations. It would be incredibly irresponsible, incredibly foolhardy of me to just be like, yeah, F it, doesn't matter. Because the FAA does notice. The FAA wants to encourage a culture of safety. And if they feel that there's someone out there who is basically being safe and encouraging a culture of education and safety, but that person is perhaps technically breaking the rules, but you can't really prove it, and there's plausible deniability, the FAA will go, we got bigger fish to fry. And they'll go fry a fish like Philly Mikey, who just repeatedly does unsafe things, breaking the rules blatantly, and then when the FAA says, excuse me, sir, you know, you can't do that. He basically flips him the middle finger and keeps doing it. And they're like, okay, this guy, we're going to roast him. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but like, if I say, if you leave food in your campsite, a bear will come and maul you in the middle of the night. That's not right or wrong. It just is the way it is. Don't leave food in your campsite. Don't blatantly break the rules. And you'll be less likely for that FAA bear to decide that you're the tent he wants to get in right now. So a lot of people today are breaking the rules. They fly without a spotter. They fly without a ham license. No one cares. They don't care. And they're too small of a fish for the FAA to ever notice. And I think realistically that's what's going to happen in September 2016. Manufacturers, or sorry, 2020, September 16, 2023. Realistically, a lot of people will just keep doing what they're doing. The FAA will not notice or care unless they're idiots. And so for the people who are like, is this it? Is FPV dead? I'm like, well, it's not dead yet. It's not dead yet. You're out there and you're not flying with a spotter. Me, I always fly with a spotter. Always line of sight, always with a spotter. Well, how is that possible, Bardwell? I've seen you fly behind your barn. And then you fly up to yourself and the quad is right there on the porch, and I didn't see anybody with you on the porch. I'm not going to get into the details. I don't break those rules, though. I respect those rules. And you should, too. But some people don't. And they're going to keep not respecting the rules. The idea that this regulation means FPV is dead is only as strong as their ability to enforce it and their desire to enforce it. And I just don't think it's there. So, if you're a person who always wants to obey the rules 100% of the time, then remote ID is going to make it harder for you to do that. That's a fact. But if you're a typical person who just wants to fly and have fun, then as long as you don't become the biggest fish that the FAA wants to fry today, you're probably just going to be fine. That's my opinion. Okay, FAA guys, you could turn the volume back up again. Bulldog FPV says, I upgraded my QAVS from analog to avatar. My RSSI values flashed 00. Bulldog, I'm assuming you've got the OSD working. And if the RSSI was displaying in the analog OSD, it should be displaying just the same in the avatar OSD. They're the same thing. So that's a weird one. My guess is something else changed, man. Something else changed. People are saying discretionary enforcement is a problem. And yes, it is. Discretionary, like if you have a police officer who pulls you over and you're speeding, you know, and the police officer says, well, I'm going to let you off with a warning today, son. I feel like that's morally questionable. And it's tough because we want human beings with judgment enforcing the law. We don't want a robot like, you are speeding, you will be summarily executed. We don't want Judge Dredd, so to speak. Judge Dredd had a lot of discretion, I suppose. He's the other end of it. But anytime you have discretion in enforcement, you have the potential for unfair application. And that's a problem. But in this case with the FAA, I think it's simply a matter of they don't have the resources. They simply don't have the resources to enforce every single violation. And so when they say, which cases are we going to work on today, it's only the cases that are the most blatant, the most in conflict with the FAA's values. And based on the cases that the FAA has taken, the things they care about are they care about education. And so, for example, there was I think it was Peter McKinnon. Peter McKinnon got dinged by the FAA. He did a drone flight. The FAA reached out. I may be misremembering. I know I've seen this video. I think it was Peter McKinnon. If I've got the guy wrong, I apologize. The gist of it is that a major YouTuber did some drone flights years ago. He got a call from the FAA, and they said, hello, sir, are you aware that you're supposed to have a Part 107 license, and also you're not supposed to be flying whatever, however you were flying? And he was like, I don't know what he said. But the gist of it was that they asked him to make a video. They said, could you just make a video and tell people, hey, I didn't know what I did was wrong, and I was supposed to do this, and just tell this story. And they didn't fine him. They didn't take him to court. They just wanted to get the word out there. So those are the things they care about. But they just don't have the manpower to go after everybody. It's not that they are selective in that the cases they take are ones that are consistent with their sort of values and priorities. But it's not like they're just letting people off because they want to. They simply can't take all the cases. Alrighty. Alrighty. Let's take a question. Let's take another question. Statute of limitations says, what's up, FPV? One of the things that the FAA has to prove if they're going to go after you is they have to prove the date of the flight, or at least be able to convince it. Because if you could make an argument that the flight was, if theoretically, if they don't know when the flight was, they can't, you don't even have to make an argument. That's the way the law works. You don't have to, if they have a piece of video where you flew, number one, they have to prove that you're the pilot, right? With a reasonable, they have to, within reasonable margin, I don't know what the exact standard of evidence is for this type of case, but they have to prove that you were the pilot, and they have to prove that when the flight occurred and where the flight occurred. I'm told that that's one of the reasons why I think that that's one of the reasons why when the FAA went after Philly Mikey, they only dinged him for infractions on his live streams. Because for an uploaded video, theoretically, it might have been flown by someone else, or it might have been edited, or it might have been flown 10 days ago or 10 years ago or whoever. But on a live stream where you are live flying the drone with the drone screen on the live stream, they can say, look, pretty clearly this happened in real time, on this day. So my advice to pilots who maybe aren't going to follow all of the rules would be, number one, fly safely, right? Fly in a remote area. Don't fly over people. Don't fly in controlled airspace. And number two, create plausible deniability about when the flight was, where it occurred, and who was the pilot. I thought of Casey Neistat. Casey Neistat had a video once where he flew a drone over the Sydney Harbor Bridge. And I thought, this is incredibly reckless. And then I thought, do we know that Casey Neistat is flying a drone over the Sydney Harbor Bridge? Could this be a helicopter? And he just thinks it'd be cool to seem like a rebel? I mean, it probably was a drone. We don't know. And if you were to take him to court and say, sir, you flew a drone over the Sydney Harbor Bridge, and he was to go, did I? You saw some footage of an aircraft over the Sydney Harbor Bridge. Was it a drone? Was I flying it? When did that flight occur? Well, you can't prove it. So some degree of plausible deniability will take you a little while. Phantom FPV says, back to blurring my face out. Yeah, good to see you, Phantom. Alrighty. Alrighty. Well, I feel like we talked about remote ID kind of a lot. Will FPV stores and online stores continue selling? Yes, they'll just stop selling bind and flies. They'll sell like plug and plays with a receiver missing, and then you're good to go. Leo Ponce, we don't know if a university could become a FRIA. We don't know the standards for a FRIA. We just don't know. We have to wait. Will I buy the DJI Avata Swiss Drone AS? I'm torn. The people I have talked to who have the Avata have told me that it's surprisingly cool. And I was like, really? Really? And they're like, it's really good. And I was like, shoot, maybe I ought to review it. I'm going to need to get the goggles anyway. The thing is, it's going to be so effing expensive. And my video isn't going to come out on release day because I'm not part of the embargo. So if I have to spend $1,300 whatever dollars on the damn thing, and then my video comes out 5 days later and doesn't get the big bump, I don't know. I'm torn. I'm torn. It won't pay for itself, but I need the goggles anyway. So I don't know. I don't know. I could buy the Avata. Well, there's no point in reviewing the Avata with the old goggles, even though technically it will work. People are going to want to know about the new goggles. Thank you, Phantom FPV, for a $5 super chat. Slowly but surely on the mend. But nothing can keep me away from my stream. Okay. AH4 Quad 6 says, sorry, Josh, but that's like wondering if you will go to the toilet again. I don't actually know what you're referring to. I'm kind of confused. Bob Griffin, thanks for a $2 super chat. No message, but thank you. Bob, if you meant to send me a message, go ahead and put it in the chat and tag my name. Corey Man. Let's get back to questions about FPV stuff. I have a Flywoo Hex HD. The GPS never gets any satellites, only when I connect to Betaflight and then unplug. It cannot get sats by itself. So, Corey Man, what's probably happening there is that when the video transmitter is active, it makes so much radio interference that the GPS can't get a lock. So a common workaround for that is that you plug in USB to the flight controller, which powers up the GPS, but not the video transmitter. Then the GPS gets lock. Then you can plug in the battery and unplug the USB, and then you could go fly. It is extremely difficult to get GPS working well on very small quadcopters. So, because everything is in such close proximity. And that's a workaround. Apollo, thank you for a $5 super chat. Who says how much airspace we own over a property and where the limit is? I thought the Supreme Court ruled 500 feet. Apollo, that is not correct. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about private property and private airspace. Anybody who says you control X number of feet above your property, so-and-so said, is wrong. Okay? Whatever you think Cosby, US versus Cosby. There we go. Got it. US versus Cosby, Causby, not the comedian. US versus Cosby, etc. All that stuff, it doesn't define a fixed airspace that you own above your property. The FAA's position is that they control the entirety of the national airspace down to the blades of grass. Okay? Now, there is some give and take there. That cases like US v. Cosby come into play. So US v. Cosby said that you have the right to use the airspace above your property. And I have to say that I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an expert on the law, so I'm going to do my best to share the gist of the case, and a lawyer might pick some of this apart. But the gist of US v. Cosby is that if I have property, I can't be deprived of the use of the airspace above that property. For example, if I want to set up a tower, a deer stand, if I want to set up a radio antenna, if I want to build a building, I'm going to build a 5-story building on my property, that the FAA can't say, no, we need that airspace. Okay? I have the right to use the property. However, that does not extend, and this is going to, why? That does not extend to the right to fly an aircraft in the airspace. For some reason, if I build a radio antenna or a building on my property, if I put up a flagpole, that is me using my airspace, and that I have the right to do that. And the government doesn't say, no, that's our airspace, you can't do that. But as soon as I take off an aircraft, now the FAA says, no, now you're in our airspace, buddy. And you got to play by our rules. That's the state of play in the United States today. Anybody who tells you otherwise is good luck. Good luck. That's the state of play. So there is no airspace that you own over your property when it comes to flying an aircraft. You want to build a building or put up a structure? Yes, you have the right to that, to use that airspace. But as soon as you take off an aircraft, now you're in the FAA's domain. Quadrophenia, good to see you again, Quadrophenia. Haven't seen you in a long time. What if you don't fly higher than your house? Quadrophenia, that's protected operations. Protected operations says that as long as you are within so many feet of a structure, then it's not reasonable that an aircraft would be flying in that area, and you're good to go. The United States doesn't have any protected operations support, although there is some push to get it defined. Greg Boughton, thank you for a $2 super chat. Thanks for your help. Hope you get well soon. Thank you, Greg Boughton. Me too. This is super, super annoying. I would rather have had like 104 degree, knock on wood, fever for 3 days and then just get better than to have a super mild fever for a couple days, basically get better, and then have a effing cough and other weird things happen into my body for like 3 effing weeks counting. It's so annoying. It's so annoying. It's so annoying. Anybody who says, "Oh, it's just a flu," you go to hell. This is nice. I can only speak for myself. This has been the weirdest illness I've ever had. My blood pressure started dropping. Like, I don't want to get into I don't want to overshare, but like I would, like my, all of my, like nothing life threatening, but like I have a fitness tracker, so I track my my pulse rate and my respiratory rate while I sleep. I have all these other metrics that I track. All of my vitals are just like whacked out right now. It's so effing weird and so annoying. I hope I get better soon. I don't know. I'm basically don't think I'm at risk of anything serious, but all my vitals are just like all over the place. It's weird. Athix has had it 3 times. Each time's been different. God, I don't even. Clockwork DG, yes, I took a test. This was you're out of the loop. This was like 3 weeks ago. And by the way, I would like to say, I went to Minefield. I would like to just say for the record, I checked with several doctors voluntarily, including my own doctor. Everybody told me that after 10 days, you're not transmissible anymore. Minefield was like, it was like 21 days or more, 24 days out. So I did go to Minefield. I would like, and if you caught me coughing at Minefield, I would just like to reassure you that I absolutely wouldn't have come if I thought I was going to be spreading anything. But everybody I talked to said, no, you just, it's going to linger, but you're not transmissible. So I would like to just get that out there. Anyway. Simon P. And Willie FPV. I talked for like 45 minutes about remote ID and its effect on me and my channel, so I'm not going to go back there, but you can rewind. Kevin Sumner, thank you for a $10 super chat. Who is the Joshua Bardwell of 3D printing? The guys that I like. There are several great 3D printing channels. One of them is Maker's Muse. Maker's Muse is fantastic. I wouldn't presume to say he's the Joshua Bardwell of 3D printing because I wouldn't presume to say who Joshua Bardwell is to you. But he's excellent. He has excellent content about 3D printing. Who else do I watch? I mean, I might be subscribed to them. Who's another good 3D printing channel? Let's see. There's at least one more that I watch, but it's not coming to me. What if I go to Maker's Muse and then do channels? No. So is there a way I can see similar channels? Who do I subscribe? 130 channels subscribed. Jesus. Well, Maker's Muse. Teaching Tech. Thank you so much. Sebi D. Thank you in the Discord. That's the one. Thank you, sir. Teaching Tech is the other one that I turn to a lot. So Maker's Muse and Teaching Tech are both excellent channels about 3D printing. They're not the only ones out there. There are other guys out there that are good, but they're the ones that have sort of got me going, and I think they have excellent content. Oh, thank you. The chat is also telling me Teaching Tech. Curtis Bangert says CNC Kitchen. CNC Kitchen, I've watched some of their stuff. I haven't, they weren't like first to come to my mind, but they are also good. I've seen some of their stuff. They do a lot of like adhesion tests and strength tests. I think that CNC Kitchen, to my mind, doesn't have as much like beginner how-to content. CNC Kitchen has a little bit more sort of advanced, out there content. Whereas if you're just a beginner who wants to get started, I think Maker's Muse has some really great beginner tutorials. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, CNC Kitchen is really deep in depth. He's more like, I would say, the Chris Rosser. He's more like the Chris Rosser of 3D printing. He does all these crazy in-depth tests of, like, you know, if I print on a Tuesday and under the full moon, are my prints stronger or whatever? Yeah. Alrighty. Let's see here. Wayne Grant, thank you for 70 South African Rand. Could you explain how shielding GPS wires helps with quicker SATS lock? Yes. So, first of all, Wayne, let me say that there are many things that can make a difference in your GPS performance. Not all of them will make a difference for everybody. So you'll see people out there who say, you got to shield your wires, man. And other people will be like, well, I tried that and it didn't work. Nothing is guaranteed, but it's not just BS. The reason that the GPS struggles to get lock on a small quadcopter is that there is a huge amount of electrical noise, largely from the video transmitter, but also if you have a receiver that is a telemetry receiver, the telemetry transmissions make noise, and the flight controller itself, the microprocessor, I've been told that the microprocessors that they run at around 1 kilohertz, and they can, or something, I'm going to get the details wrong, I apologize, but basically the microprocessor can make electrical noise right around the frequency that messes with the GPS unit. And so there's normally on a big quadcopter, the GPS antenna is far away from those things. And so just because electrical noise falls off exponentially as the inverse square of the distance. Yes. It just doesn't, you just move things far away from each other and it's fine. But on a small quadcopter, that's not an option. So speaking of shielding the wires, what you're doing there is the wires are acting like antennas. Antennas are just wires. They're wires of a specific shape or size. That means that when you feed an AC signal into them, they radiate electromagnetic energy in a certain frequency with a certain transmission pattern. But an antenna is just a conductive piece of metal. And so anytime you have a wire, there is the potential for that wire to act like a receiving antenna. And so what'll happen is that you'll get noise coming into the wires that makes the power noisier, and therefore makes the radio receivers need clean power because they're receiving an extraordinarily weak signal. The signal coming into a GPS receiver or even a video receiver, if your quadcopter's flying far away, it's extraordinarily weak. And a small amount of environmental noise or noise inside the system can mean that you can't amplify it effectively. So shielding the wires, if the problem that you're having is that your wires are picking up electrical noise, shielding the wires can help with that. Twisting the wires can help with that. These are things that can help. How much do you think remote ID will affect flight times and battery life of drones? Not at all. The weight is going to be pretty small. Obviously, if you're flying like an 85 millimeter whoop, then it's a different story. The power consumption and the weight are going to be extremely small. The thing is with drones, with larger drones like a 4-inch, a 5-inch, or even a 3-inch, the motors pull so much power. People ask, if I turn my video transmitter down from 1 watt to 25 milliwatts, will I get longer flight time? Oh yeah, it makes sense. You're transmitting at a lower output power, so you're drawing less power from the battery. That is true. Physics work. But the problem is that it's like if you have a 1,300 horsepower drag car and it's burning, how many gallons of fuel do you burn when you do a run down the drag strip? And now you ask, hey, if I take If I throw, 5 pounds, if I take 5 pounds of weight out of the back of the trunk, is it going to make a difference? It's like, yeah, it'll make a difference. Every pound counts. But you're burning so much fuel just to move the car down the track that little 5 pounds of weight you took out of the trunk isn't going to matter. So whatever the remote ID module pulls in terms of power, it's going to be negligible compared to the amount of energy that the motors are pulling for most quadcopters. Garrett Pickens, thanks for a $2 super chat. Thanks for all the videos you make and future ones. I'm going to have to go back to last week's live stream and see if I was coughing more or less. Does the DJI Goggle 2 have video out? I don't think anybody knows that. I mean, the people who have the goggle might know it. But I don't know it. And I haven't heard any leaks about it. Timber Bunny points out that GPS signals are not really near the frequency of anything in a quad. So, Timber Bunny, there's two things to say about that. The first is that you might have harmonics, and a harmonic is that, like, if you got a signal at 900 megahertz, there's going to be a harmonic at 2x, so 1.8 gigahertz, and 3x, and so on. So you sometimes get harmonics, but you also can get amplifier overload. Like, any signal that's super powerful is going to overload the front-end amplifier on a receiver, even if it's in a different frequency. So, yeah. Dominic Clifton points out that you could keep the receiver and the video transmitter powered down until the GPS gets a lock. Dominic, wouldn't that require you to have switchable power? A lot of flight controllers today have power for VTX, power switching for VTX. I don't think any of them have power switching for the receiver, though. Spencer FPV, I definitely... So I haven't had my house checked for radon. Maybe that would be a good thing to do. I guarantee you that I don't have radon sickness because I had a positive COVID test like 3 weeks ago. So I'm pretty sure I know what's making me cough. I mean, I do spend a lot of time in my basement. Maybe it would be good to do a radon test. Let's see. Radon test kit for home. Radon test kit for home. $29. That is probably worth doing. Ooh, home radon detector. I don't think I need that. That's $100. Ooh, smart radon detector. $155. I can get a radon detector that lives in my basement and talks to my smartphone. Tempting. Can you do like a radon map? Zone 3. Is that good or bad? Zone 3 is yellow, which makes me think that it... Oh, no. Oh, Tennessee's got some of everything. Uh-oh. EPA map of radon. What does it mean? Is Zone 1 good or bad? This is the worst chart ever. Is Zone 1 good or bad? I need to know. 3 is a higher number, which should mean it's worse. But 1 is red, which should mean it's worse. This is the worst chart. Where's Knox County? Oh, that's bad. Oh my goodness. Uh-oh. Oh my goodness. Well. I guess I'll look into that. You know, I'm half joking, but I do spend a lot of time in the basement, so I should probably get my house checked, I guess. Anyway, this particular cough is definitely because of COVID. And thank you for the suggestion of getting my house radon tested. I always looked a little radioactive, huh? What do you do? Anyway, I'll figure that out later. Oh, no ventilation. Yeah, like my house, like my basement has a lot of ventilation. All right. Okay. Jeckley thinks coughing was less last week. Really? I have to go back and look. It is what it is. Maybe I was hiding it better. People are saying I was definitely coughing less last week. Fair enough. Now I have to fake it. See, I'm fine. I think I'm muting less this week. That's all. All right, we got another 25 minutes to go, folks. Mage FPV says if this cough lasts a week or two, see your doctor. Yeah, I called to make an appointment with my doctor just as a follow-up, and it was like 2 weeks till I could get in to see them. So, anyway. DJI Goggle V2 won't read any SD cards. Barth FPV, have you tried formatting it inside the goggle? Medical cannabis. I don't understand how cannabis would make me cough less. And I know that cannabis is supposed to be this magical cure-all, according to people who are into cannabis. They're like, oh yeah, you have anxiety? Cannabis. Can't sleep? Cannabis. Overweight? Cannabis. I know that it's supposed to be this magical cure-all, but I don't see how cannabis is going to make me cough less. Oh, I eat it. Oh, I see. You eat it. I understand. I guarantee you vaping or smoking is not going to be... Yeah, Robin Visser points out I never hear Blunty cough. Yeah, well, some people have more experience with cannabis than others. Oh... Mage FPV, don't worry, man. I'm keeping an eye on myself. I'm aware of the situation. Trust me, as a hypochondriac, if there was any excuse for me to go to the doctor and say, I'm sick, I would be going. Ohmed out FPV, thanks for a $10 super chat. Check out the Phillips Bend nuclear plant in Sir Joinsville, Tennessee. You're welcome. All right. What do we got? Let's get some more questions. I'm gonna have to go play Elden Ring. You guys don't give me some questions. Am I suggesting that Blunty is always baked? I mean, I don't know, but if I had to bet, I'd say yes. Oh yeah. So look what someone made. He gave me one of these. He gave me one of these at Minefield. Are these available online? Barth FPV, are these available online? Oh my God, Jeff Paulson has an actual question about FPV. I'm choosing between Zing 2 1404 3000 kV and 3800 kV for a new 3.5-inch quad build. What battery voltage, Jeff? What battery voltage? We need to know. Yeah, if you can buy that shirt somewhere, I definitely want to. It's Fly High FPV. Okay, thank you. Fly High FPV is the one who made this shirt, and it is available. Is it under swag, I would guess? Yeah. I would like to say I have. That's not the exact shirt though. Is it available in colors? Oh no, not Irish green. I would like to say I have nothing to do with this, for the record, but I'm happy to promote it because it's silly, and I like it. So, Sunshine FF asks, what's the best way to test for your screw grounding your frame in the ESCs out and causing video issues? With a multimeter. Test for continuity between the frame and the screw. Make sure you test against the cut edge of the frame because the enamel, the resin surface is oftentimes not conductive. He's on 4S. 4S 3.5-inch props. Let's see. I always have to remind myself about the, here's a 3.5-inch 2S. What's a 3.5-inch 4S? The tiny trainer is 3-inch. What KV motors does it use? I always have to get myself back in the ballpark. Oh, that's 3S. I feel like 3800 kV on 4S with 3.5-inch props. What about the GEP-RC Smart 3.5? There we go. That's a 4S. 3.5-inch. So that uses 1404 3850 kV motors. You're suggesting a... You're suggesting, where's the question? Where's the question? 1404. Yeah, so I'm really happy with the GEP-RC Smart 3.5. And it uses 1404 3800 kV motors. So I would say go with 3800 kV and I would think 3000 kV would be more like a cruiser. Yeah, I would do 3800. Jeff Paulson, we got you. We're answering your question. Yeah, he's repeating it because I was looking for it. If you feel like that 3800 is a little bit too much, you can always bring it down with a throttle limit or a motor output limit. JRBFPV wants to know, on DJI, will a different antenna on the quad improve video qualities? Probably. JRB, I have always been satisfied with the performance of the Caddx antennas. They are probably not like the best just because they're made to a price. But so probably you would get a little better performance by putting some high quality antennas on, but I've always been satisfied with the antenna. I think you get, and the problem is that, let's say you put a $15 premium antenna on your Caddx Vista, you're going to have to do that for every quad you own, and that adds up quickly. Whereas getting a great set of antennas in your goggles, you buy once and you're good. Scott Abramacek wants to know thoughts on the Master air screw props. Scott, I've never seen a Master air screw prop that was good for a 5-inch mini quad, except sometimes people use them for high-speed runs. Master air screw props are not made of the same material that like freestyle props and racing props are typically made of. It's a much more rigid and brittle material. So those props are stiffer That means they're good for high-speed runs because they don't deflect. But the other thing is that they usually don't have a blade profile that's optimized for a multi-rotor. So if we look at a master air screw 5-inch prop, can I even have a 5-inch prop? I can't even find a 5-inch. Here we go. Nope. I can't even find a master air screw 5-inch prop. Is this it? Oh, 5x4.5. So this is clearly intended as a multi-rotor prop. Typical master air screw props, their blade profile is more intended for airplanes, which stay in a relatively narrow RPM range, whereas multi-rotor props are constantly going to low and high RPM and need a different blade profile to be effective at all RPM ranges. I just think that if you need a 5-inch prop, why wouldn't you go with a prop from somebody like HQ or GemFan, who have been making 5-inch racing and freestyle multi-rotor props for freaking ever, whereas Master Air Screw is new to the game. Glass fiber. See, this is what I'm talking about right here. Glass fiber. No! 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 Don't fly glass fiber props. Unless you have a very specific need. If you're trying to do a top speed run and you never intend to crash and you need the absolute stiffest props, that might be good. But for general use, no, don't use Master Air Screw. Blizzard FPV, thank you for $2 Canadian. What's FPV? Are you real? I can't tell what this question is meaning. What this question means. Daniel Reeder asks, I'm looking at FPV after using DJI Mavics for photography uses. Should I go analog or digital for my first drone? It's mostly a budgetary question. If you have the budget to go with DJI, then you probably will be happier that way. That's the reality. His name is Blizzard FPV. He's joking. I think he's joking. I don't know how you have a name Blizzard FPV and you ask what's FPV and you like people are gonna, yeah, look, his Instagram is full of him flying FPV and stuff. He knows what FPV is. I don't know what the question is actually meant to be. Oh, what's the acronym mean? Okay, maybe. First person view or first person video. I'm not sure which. I don't think there's an official answer there. Uranium, thank you for a $5 super chat. Almost all FPV flights are well under 150 feet. Can we work with FAA or suppliers to produce flight controllers that have height limits? The FAA has explicitly rejected the idea that there would be open airspace below a certain height. The FAA maintains that they regulate the airspace down to the blades of grass, and there have been some attempts to impose private control of airspace below 150 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet. The problem with that is that once you establish... So right now, the airspace is open to anyone who wants to use it. It is a public right-of-way. And that's important because if private landowners controlled their airspace up to a certain height, then anyone flying below that height could not overfly their property without permission. Some people think that would be a good thing, but it would be a nightmare. It would mean that the use of the airspace as a public right-of-way would be severely hampered. Obviously, there are privacy implications that need to be handled, and I don't think, just speaking for myself, that the FAA's interpretation is the best one. To say that the FAA regulates the airspace down to the blades of grass, it means that if I fly a toy drone at 6 feet off the air, in my backyard, that the FAA regulates that, and that feels silly to me. It's not like a helicopter or an airplane is going to land in my backyard and I'm going to interfere with them. The FAA's argument is that a toy drone flying at 6 feet could ascend into the navigable airspace, and therefore it needs to be regulated. I don't know if I agree with that, but that's their argument. But I also think it would be a disaster if we were to say that every private landowner or government, every county or state, for when you've got public lands like parks and so forth, if you were to say that private landowners have absolute and total control of the airspace up to 75 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever it is, I think that would be a disaster. Because right now, if a local government says you can't fly here, the FAA says, sorry, we are the ones who regulate the airspace. The federal government preempts them. At least that's what they're supposed to do. They don't always actually take the case, but they should. And lawyers can make that argument. And it means that I think that that is a better situation. I don't know who it's better for, though. That's the tough thing. Certainly, it's better for the Amazon and the Walmarts of the world who want to do drone delivery if they don't have to get permission from every person whose property they overfly. If they don't have to ascend to 500 feet before they overfly the property to avoid the private no-fly zone. I think a lot of people feel like it would be better for the individuals if they controlled that airspace up to a certain height. But I think that there would be unintended consequences, and I'm not entirely sure it would be a net positive. However, the other thing we have to keep in mind is that to say, well, we're pretty much flying below 150 feet, so shouldn't that just be okay? There's a lot of people out there who fly over. There's disc launch gliders. What about the people who are flying disc launch gliders? Do you know what those are? They whip this glider up into the air 200, 300 feet with the strength of their arm. And then they glide it down and they try to, I don't know what they do. They try to land it in a specific spot, or they thermal it. What about the people who are doing gliders? Well, we can't just throw them under the bus and say, well, since they're not FPV pilots flying above 150 feet, screw them. And that's the other problem with setting a fixed ceiling. So, model rockets, yeah. So I think there's more to this. And just saying we're going to put I also don't like the idea that, you know, if I have a flight controller with a height limiter, then I should be okay. I think that really isn't in keeping with sort of the spirit of home-built drones. So there's more to it than that. Think about why asks, my DJI goggles just randomly flash DJI, go black, and then restart in flight. Most likely cause is the power source, is my guess. Either the plug is loose or something like that. That's the first thing I would search for. I think it's losing power. HFPV says too many rules. Well, you know, we live in a society. We have rules. You know, the larger and more complex a civilization you live in, the more power structures there will be to try to mitigate conflicting priorities. There certainly are people who feel like there are too many or not the right power structures in place now, but I feel like when we all decided we were going to have a gigantic civilization of however many people in the United States or whatever your country is, you know, we just kind of like, there you go. We're going to have power structures and rules. And I just don't see any way around that. The new law doesn't affect EU pilots. It's a United States regulation. Yeah. Anyway. Oh, we got about 6 minutes left in the stream. Andy Plater says, what's your take on the not using ADS-B? Way back when Remote ID was first being proposed, there were people who thought that we should just use the existing ADS-B framework and just put ADS-B transponders on drones. Other people made an argument, the FAA made the argument that that could potentially overwhelm the ADS-B system. ADS-B is a transponder that basically lets any aircraft in the air broadcast its location and other information about it, and other aircraft in the air can pick that information up. And so it essentially gives aircraft a picture of all the other aircraft who are flying around them if they have an ADS-B transponder. It's interesting that many aircraft, and I'm repeating what I've been told here by people who are knowledgeable. I'm not generally knowledgeable about full-scale aviation. But my understanding is that many small aircraft are not required to have ADS-B transponders and are still allowed to fly using older methods. And so a lot of people thought that the idea that drones would be required to have ADS-B transponders, even though freaking full-scale aircraft aren't, was kind of backwards and dumb. But it all turned out to be moot because the FAA argued that they didn't want that because they thought that it could overwhelm the system. I've heard other people, there's a commenter on my YouTube channel who thinks that the ADS-B argument was BS. And he said the ADS-B system could handle a lot of drones. It had plenty of capacity. And he spouted some numbers that I'm not really qualified to judge whether they're true or not. It's possible that the FAA was more worried about sort of overwhelming pilots with information they didn't need to know. That if there's a bunch of drones on the ground, I don't know, and that they would be overwhelmed. Their attention would be overwhelmed. I don't know. But the idea that Remote ID could have been implemented with ADS-B is definitely was proposed and was explicitly rejected by the FAA. And whether that was the right decision or not, I don't know. Whether the FAA's argument was correct, I don't know. Jeffy the Quick points out that ADS-B is required for Class A, B, and C airspace, Class E airspace at or above 10,000 feet MSL, excluding airspace at and below 2,500 feet AGL, within 30 nautical miles of a Class B primary airport, above the yada, 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 yada. I think, Jeffy, if I had to sum it up, I would say that aircraft flying just in Class G don't need ADS-B, which seems consistent with what you're saying, although not completely consistent. Well, maybe not. 30 nautical miles of Class B. Could you be in Class G? I don't know. Yeah. Eric Ashner asks, if pilots don't care about where our drones are, then what's the point? Anyway, exactly. Remote ID is not about spatial awareness of drones to full-scale pilots. The focus on safety that says that Remote ID will prevent airplanes from crashing into drones, if the goal of Remote ID was to prevent airplanes from crashing into drones, then drones would have been required to have ADS-B or something like that. Right now, Remote ID, as proposed, will not let airplanes in flight pick up the location. Because I mean, in theory, could they pick up this Bluetooth or Wi-Fi transmission? In theory, the airplane could have a receiver that picks up the transmission. What's the range of that transmission going to be, though? Is the range of that transmission going to be 300 to 600 feet, which is typical for like a Wi-Fi transmitter or a Bluetooth, maybe even less, it depends. And how fast would a full-scale aircraft close on a drone once it became aware of its location at a distance of 400 or 600 feet, right? It's silly. So even if you argue that remote ID is only for slow, low-flying aircraft, it still doesn't actually work. It should have been ADS-B if the goal was awareness to full-scale aircraft. So then what is the point? Well, we could certainly look at the system that they implemented and what it does and infer what the design goals were. Remote ID is most useful to an entity on the ground who detects a drone flying in an area and wants to find the pilot. So imagine, I actually thought of a case. We're 1 minute from the end of the stream. Is Siati here? Is he going to be streaming today? I may go slightly long. I thought of a case where remote ID is actually potentially going to make a big difference. Imagine the case where people are using drones to drop stuff, to drop contraband into prisons. Most of the time, I think, based on nothing, I think most of the time those are not self-built drones. Those are off-the-shelf like drones that people bought at a Best Buy or something, and they rigged them up with a dropper. And if that's true, then it would be relatively easy for a place like a prison to set up a remote ID receiving system that detects that transmission. And as soon as that drone powers up, it's going to start broadcasting the pilot's identifier and the pilot's location. And that changes the risk profile for whoever it is who is flying the drone trying to drop the contraband. From as long as I get in and out quickly, I get out of here and nobody catches me. Now you need someone to buy the drone and register the drone or it won't take off. So you need some kind of a fake identity to spoof that. And then as soon as you power up, it starts broadcasting your location. And they know you're there instantly. They don't need to spot you. They pick up the transmission. Now, Big Data Pimp says, well, like they won't just start building drones. Sure. Security is always a game of rock, paper, scissors. Where you do they do something, and you do something to beat them. And they do something to beat you. And it just keeps happening again and again and again. But, like, people are like, what does remote ID even do? And I sat down and I thought, like, what is it good for? What's, like, one thing it's actually going to be effective at? And I think it's going to be effective at stopping that kind of flight. At least until people ratchet, and figure out something else to do. Cool Cat asks, why would someone dropping drugs into a prison be registering their drone? Cool Cat, because when remote ID goes into effect, when you buy a DJI drone or any standard remote ID drone that is not a self-build kit, all of those drones will be required to have remote ID built in. They will not take off until you have registered the drone. And that means that you register your FAA number and it is associated with that drone serial number. And in some database somewhere, the FAA knows that Joshua Bardwell's FAA identifier is associated with this drone. And then it will not take off until it gets a GPS lock and knows the location, its takeoff location. And in fact, I believe that the controller even has to have a GPS in it to sense the pilot's location independent of the drone's location. Why would you register the drone? The drone will not function until you register it. That's what the law says. Now, I want to be very clear. That is for standard remote ID drones that come from the manufacturer with remote ID built in. A self-built drone, you just put a module on it and you register the module. Test pilot Ian asks, how long until somebody disables remote ID on the drone? Ian, the FAA requires that the system be designed so that it will not take off if it is not functioning. Now, I can think of ways you could try to get around that. For example, Could you cut the trace going to the transmit antenna on the remote ID module? So the remote ID module thinks that it's functioning perfectly, but then when it tries to transmit, it just burns out the transmit amplifier. Like, are they going to try to detect whether their antenna is disabled? I don't know. They could. My point is that you could disable it theoretically, but realistically, they have stipulated in the regulation that the drone must detect that the remote ID thing is working and not function if it isn't. Now, here's the real way you would work. Here's the next step in the ratchet. Dominic Clifton, you touched on the right thing. What you do is you create a fake module that broadcasts 300 fake sets of GPS coordinates so that it looks like there's 300 drones in the air. And then they don't know which one is yours. Trivial. Just get I don't know, like an Arduino and a Bluetooth module. I don't know. It's just trivial. That's the actual way that you could fake that. License to Drive says there's no way they could enforce such a rule. They absolutely, the standard remote ID requirement is the easiest one to enforce because they say to DJI, if you want to sell drones in the US, this is what you have to do. And DJI just does it. And now you, as a customer of a DJI drone, you just bought the drone and that's the rules. It's much harder to enforce for self-builds where you are required to put a module on the drone. But if you don't, they'll never know unless they catch you. But for people flying standard remote ID drones like DJI drones, they absolutely don't have to enforce it because they just enforce it on DJI and that's the end. And I'm picking on DJI here. Anybody selling, a self-built drone, Skydio, etc. Anybody, not a self-built, a standard remote ID drone, it's fully functional out of the box. They're all going to have to comply with this. Who's Your Father says if you can figure out how to attach a dropping mechanism to a drone, you can figure out how to unplug the remote ID transmitter. Again, Who's Your Father? The requirement is that the drone will detect if the remote ID module is disabled or tampered with and not function if that's the case. You got to understand that it will still probably be possible to figure out how to disable it, but they thought of that. Anyway. Apparently no Ciati stream today, so it doesn't matter if I go long. Matthias Anderson, thank you for 20 Swedish kroner. I'm going to buy analog goggles on a budget. What to buy? Ishin EV800D. I am Killball 300. Remote ID does not apply to sub 250 unless you're doing commercial operation, in which case it does apply. Mechanic Aaron, thank you for 100 Norwegian kroner. Have there turned up more flight controllers with problems with the ICM 42688P? The Maytech H43 Slim has it. I don't know, Mechanic Aaron. It should be very easy for you to. I say very easy. Sorry, I don't mean to assume. It should be relatively easy for you to get a black box trace, and if you see a huge spike of 20 hertz noise, then you know. Aber the Ham, I agree with you. If I had a standard remote ID drone that I wanted to disable the remote ID, I think the simplest thing to do would be to try to disable the transmit antenna on the remote ID unit. You could, if it was a trace, a lot of times an antenna for Bluetooth or Wi-Fi will be a trace on a circuit board. You could cut the trace. If it was a physical antenna, you could disconnect the antenna. You could connect a resistor. The worst case scenario would be that there is a receiver antenna in the controller, And if it doesn't pick up the remote ID broadcast, it says, oh, something's wrong here, and won't take off. Maybe you could get around that by holding them really close together. And then if I were to try to work around that, I would detect the strength of the signal. And if it wasn't strong enough, then I would say it's been tampered with. I mean, you could just keep running down this hole. But I think that simply unplugging the module will not work. It may even just be built into a circuit board and you can't easily unplug it. Simply unplugging the module, the flight controller would easily detect that and then say, oh, I'm not taking off. But disabling the transmit antenna or interfering with the transmit antenna, to me, seems like the way that people will try to work around this. Dominic Clifton says the 42688P is the best. Dominic, have you heard about the flight controllers with the big problem with the 42688P? LJ Smith Flying asks, if I review an RC model on YouTube but not compensated by any company, will remote ID affect that? LJ Smith, if you received the model, if you received the quad from the company, I believe the FAA would consider that to be compensation and would consider that a Part 107 operation. If you monetize the video, I'm 100% sure the FAA would consider that to be a Part 107 operation. Once you're doing a Part 107 operation, the FAA requires you to be remote ID compliant regardless of any other factors. Dominic Clifton, good to know that gyro trip is not inherently flawed, but the design of the flight controllers was the problem, according to him. He uses the 42688P on his flight controller, and as usual, as long as you give it clean power and good FC design, it's not a problem. Dominic says Maytech bridges VDD and VDD-IO. Is that good or bad? Are you telling me that the Maytech design is good or bad? I Am Rudy asks, would it be illegal to build a spoofer that spams fake GPS locations? I Am Rudy, that's a very interesting question. Let's dig into that. It is illegal to jam RF transmissions. Now, usually that means simply transmitting noise that jams. Let's say that I wanted to mess with your Wi-Fi network. And so I set up a Wi-Fi network right next to yours, and I start doing a gigantic BitTorrent download. Okay? And now my Wi-Fi access point is constantly talking, and it causes you to get reduced performance. I don't think that would fall under the legal definition of jamming, which is illegal. Because I'm not jamming you. I'm just using this. I'm using the frequencies. I'm allowed to use the frequencies. I'm just downloading some footage. It's not, Sam, we're not talking about spoofing GPS. We're talking about broadcasting false remote ID information. I haven't heard of a law that says it's illegal to broadcast false remote ID information. Now, maybe that's somewhere in there. I don't know. I don't know. So I don't know what the FAA's recourse would be if someone were to build a remote ID spoofer that makes it look like there's 500 drones in the air when there really aren't. I don't know what their recourse would be. They wouldn't like it. And I'm sure they would try to find ways to stop it. But I haven't heard of anything in the law or in the regulations that would prevent that. And I guarantee you there's going to be an open source project that does that in the next year. Eric Toft, you are correct that the FCC is who has jurisdiction over signal jamming and spoofing. If you were jamming, that would be the FCC, 100%. Jamming in unlicensed band, though, if you're jamming a licensed band like cell phones, they are going to get on you. They're going to try and find you. If you're jamming in an unlicensed band, technically you're breaking the rule, but I think it's much less likely to get their attention. But I don't know for sure. It feels to me like they're more likely to be like, hey, you know, what are you going to do? If the FAA were to enforce it, it would be because there was something in the remote ID rules that they use, that they interpret to make it their authority to respond to people who are spoofing or something. 661 FPV, nothing about remote ID makes beta flight illegal. Those two things don't overlap. All that remote ID means for people who build home-built drones is you are expected to put a remote ID module on your drone. And if you don't, and you're caught, you'll get in trouble. $1,500 fine. Part of the problem there is intent. So the reason I use the example of downloading a file is that even if in my heart I know that I'm downloading those big files because I want to screw with your network performance, there's plausible deniability there. No one can prove that I just don't like downloading big files all the time. And if I'm transmitting remote ID messages, is there any plausible deniability that I'm doing it for some other reason than to interfere with the system? Because the 2.4 gigahertz unlicensed frequency band, it's open for anyone to use as long as you use it within certain power output limits and so forth. Anyone can use it. So if I decide, you know what, I would like to do a test project. I would like to know, just for my own education, how many remote ID drones can be in an area at a time. I wonder, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a project, a little Arduino box and a little, Bluetooth module, and I'm just going to spoof a bunch of messages. I'm just curious. Yeah, you know what? I want to make a box. I want to make a box that records remote ID messages over time. I wonder what the capacity of that box would be. Like, what if there were 1,000 drones in a location? Could my device record all that traffic? What is the theoretical interaction between remote ID and Wi-Fi? If there were 1,000 drones in the air at a time, would it interfere with the Wi-Fi network? Do you see that these are all completely legitimate reasons to create a device that broadcasts a shitload of fake remote ID messages into the air? They are completely valid. And so I think it's going to be challenging to find a way to enforce for the FAA to go, no, you can't do that. I think it's going to be challenging. Because the FAA would have to go back to Congress and say, we need a law saying it is a crime to spoof this system. But even that has problems, because all of those things I listed are legitimate reasons to spoof remote ID packets. And so if you were going to outlaw a legitimate behavior, you have to have a justification for that. So it's tricky. There are a lot of these kinds of questions that no one has bothered to think about or answer, which some people would say, You should have done that, FAA, before you implemented the system. But hey. Subsonic Freak wants to know, how will remote ID affect older hardware? I'm not sure, Subsonic. There clearly is older I think that manufacturers only have to be compliant with new hardware manufactured after September 16th, 2023. So I think that old hardware isn't affected. Am I right about... Does anyone in the chat know if I'm right about that? All right, we're about 20 minutes over, but that's fine. I'm making up for the fact that I'm coughing by doing a long stream. Cool Cat, the FAA will not give up on drone registration. The FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 mandated that the FAA implement something like remote ID. It didn't contain the technical details. That was left to the FAA to work out. But essentially, the legislature passed a law that required the FAA to do this. And everything we've seen from 2018 on, including drone registration and so on and so on and so on, has been them trying to comply with this law. So there is no chance that the FAA will just go, all right, F this, we're done, we're out. This was a mistake. They cannot do that unless Congress changes their mandate. License to drive. Remote ID doesn't have a connection to lose. Remote ID is a broadcast that is transmitted from the drone. If you fly the drone far enough away from you that you cannot see your own remote ID signal, that has no effect. The drone is broadcasting a signal to anybody who is within range of the drone. However, if you have a standard remote ID drone and it loses signal, it may be required to land or return to home. I'm not sure exactly the behavior it's expected, but it is expected to stop flying as soon as is feasible if it loses GPS in the middle of flight, for example. Riet9 wants me to address the question from Nikola Kurchik. Should I get the Wizard X220 as my first drone? No. Wizard X220 is terrible. It always has been, and I expect that it always will be. It's just really bad. It is inexpensive, and it will get you in the air. I would rather you spend $250 on something like an Emax Tiny Hawk than a Wizard, though. It's always been really bad. In terms of, like, the ESC just dies for no reason. The flight controller dies. It doesn't fly well. The controller is a really cheap version of... There is a good version of the FlySky i6 controller. It's a cheap knockoff version of a cheap knockoff controller. And the hardware quality is just really poor. If you have a budget of $200, don't spend it on the Wizard. Because 2 weeks later, the Wizard will be dead and you'll just be out your money. I know that there's people out there who say, I bought a Wizard and it was great. You know, you could play Russian roulette and only one of you will end up with a bullet. Doesn't mean that it's a good idea. I don't recommend you buy the Wizard. If you have $200 to spend, you're going to need like closer to $250. Get something like the Emax Tiny Hawk, or yeah, get a Tiny Hawk, bind a flight kit, and just enjoy that. It also will break eventually, but you'll get a lot of good use out of it before you break it. Peter, whose last name I don't know how to pronounce, so I won't. Thank you for 1,000 Hungarian Florin. Just got a new old stock never flown Nazgul 5. It's a V1 flight controller, freezes and restarts. Any idea why? No. And you should go right back to the store you bought it from. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Don't spend hours of your time trying to solve this. Go right back to whoever you bought it from and say, this drone you sold me doesn't work. That is it. That's what you should do. I don't know why it's happening. It's either the damaged flight controller or maybe it's a power problem. but just you bought a product, the product should work. Alrighty, folks. We are going to wrap up. Thank you so much for staying with me for the stream. I've had a good time. I hope you've had a good time. That's going to do it. Happy flying, y'all.